Okay, hello, my name is William Belmont, and today I will be presenting on the trade war between China and the United States and what that did to the agriculture sector of the economy. Alright, so prior to the 2016 election, Donald Trump pledged to make the United States less reliant on foreign industries and bring back American products to American households. And he did this by imposing some pretty aggressive tariffs on imported Chinese goods, along with other countries like Mexico and Canada. And his aim with this plan was to provide relief to industries competing against foreign competitors, but his plan backfired when all these other countries set up their own tariffs on American goods in retaliation. And these counter tariffs hurt all the industries that weren't competing with foreign imports, especially the ones that were heavy on exports. The agriculture sector was one that was hit harder than any other because of how much exports we sent to China. And when China stopped buying our crops, farmers had a huge surplus. So in order to sell all these extra crops, farmers were forced to lower their prices, which was lowered far beyond what the regular market price is. And that threatened many businesses and put many businesses into bankruptcy. And another problem that arose from the Chinese tariffs was increased prices on the steel and aluminum products, which meant that farmers had to pay more to get machinery to produce. So the cost of production for all these crops were increasing, all while there's a huge surplus. So it created a huge problem. And once the government noticed all of this, they were forced to spend tons of tax dollars to save the industry from collapsing. So they bought excess crops off the market to try to maintain the high prices, and they offered many subsidies to struggling farmers too. And so the agriculture industry is obviously very important. So in order to keep our country fed, the government was forced to do whatever it had to save the industry. So Trump's policies regarding foreign trade were aimed to shrink the U.S. imports, but consequently shrank our exports in the process. And this should have been expected, but the failure to acknowledge this codependent relationship with China caused a huge escalation into a trade war. So really, by punishing China's economy, the United States really punished themselves. And the underlying problem here is that the U.S. feels, I think, threatened by the Chinese economy and our trade deficit with them since they joined the World Trade Organization back in 2001. And the American people fear that the success or failure of our economy is dependent on the success or failure of the Chinese economy, which is scary to a lot of people. But the truth in this whole process is that Americans no longer have the right to the cheapest and best products on the market. The only reason we traded with China in the first place was because their goods are cheaper than the ones we made domestically. So by artificially inflating the prices of the cheapest and best products, Americans are forced to buy the next best alternative, which, while it may be domestic, is not the least expensive option. The result is that our industries are not saved as originally intended by Trump's plan, because Americans have less spending power, and jobs are lost because not as many goods can be purchased at these artificially high prices. So companies are forced to lay off extra employees and cut down production. The fear of a trade deficit is pretty irrational in my opinion. In the long run, there is no trade surplus or trade deficit. So the US buys more products from China than China does from US. And this means that China has a surplus in US dollars, but they do not have a surplus in products. They send all of their products over to us. So with these US dollars, China has very few options. They can use it to purchase more products from us, but they usually tend not to because they're so good at producing their own. So instead, what they usually do is reinvest the US dollars back into our economy in ways like creating factories so that they can produce their goods here and sell them here without having to ship them overseas, so it cuts a lot of production costs. And so while that's good for China, it's also good for the United States because we have a ton of new factories, which opens up new jobs all around the country. So without foreign trade, our country becomes pretty limited in the products and they become more expensive. And with foreign trade, we're able to get much cheaper products at a much easier cost.